Hello and welcome everyone to the information session of Business Analytics and AI, Decision Making Using Data. This is a program information session for an online course from University of Cambridge, Judge Business School. My name is Rudolfo Rudi Falad. I'll be your moderator today. I work with Emeritus, who partnered with Cambridge to deliver this program to you. And we have faculty with us. We have David Stillwell and we have Aris Oriopoulos. You can correct me later. They'll talk a little bit about what you can expect from this course. So welcome once again. And I know there's a lot of you joining us live. If you're watching this from the recording, then of course you will get the slides as well. And all the links that are needed will be there included. But before we get going, please give us a little bit of an overview of where you're connecting from. And you can put this in the chat, which is on your left side, hopefully, if I see it right. So where are you connecting from? Is everybody connecting from the UK or also from outside of the UK? Generally, this is a very international crowd. So I was right. We got Canada in the house, China in the house, Cyprus, okay. And UK as well. UK, also Lithuania, okay. Okay, anybody else? Tell us. We're not going to tell your boss. It's okay. All right, UK, Switzerland. So I'm also based in Switzerland, Nicholas. Okay, great. Okay. Connected American. Okay, that's a new one. Connecting from Ghana. Okay, UK. All right, brilliant. So everybody settled. Couple of other people trying to join. Okay, UK as well. Dubai. All right. All right, brilliant. So I think you're still trickling in. So we are carding everybody the door, making sure that you're in the right place, in the right session. This is the Business Analytics and AI. You see decision making using data. So this is a Cambridge Judge Business School online course. So we have David Stillwell with us, and we got Aris with us. I will not try to pronounce your last name again, but you can tell us. Aris, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having us here, Rudy.
All right. So how do you pronounce your last name? Tell us.
Just like the cookies, the Oreo, and then
Oriopoulos. All right. Easy. All right. And David Stillwell. All right. How are you?
Hi, Rudy. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is, I think, a bit easier to pronounce.
All right. Okay. So my name is Rudy. As I said before, I'll just manage this session with our guests, with our speakers here. And what are we going to cover? We give you a little bit of an overview of what the Judge Business School stands for, what is their focus when it comes to executive education in particular. We'll talk about AI. We'll talk about how this program looks like from day-to-day perspective. What are the key takeaways? What can you learn in this program? David and Aris will tell us a little bit about the curriculum in more detail. Who is this program for? All of these things also, if they are not clear, please put the questions in the Q&A, and we'll pause at the right point and we'll answer them. And also, we budgeted plenty of time at the end as well. So you can also just listen through the presentation, and then if you have questions at the end, we can do that as well. So as I said, we'll talk about program curriculum, the case studies that will be there. It's a very hands-on program. And then also these days you see when people complete programs like this, they showcase it on LinkedIn. So we'll talk about digital certificate. You can use it for your CV or resume and the process or job hunting process or development proof, if you will, if you want to do it within the same company. And of course, practical steps like how to go forward in case you would like to take this course. So Omiros is asking about the slides. Yes. If you register for the session, you will get the slides automatically. All right. So Cambridge, obviously, very famous university in the UK, but also it has a business school, Cambridge Judge Business School. And in particular, also, it has a program or a number of programs which are focused on executives. So this is where we are, right? We're going to focus on business and we're going to focus on executives. So in other words, we expect you to be busy professionals, and that's also reflected in how the program is structured. but you are business leaders primarily. That's what we assume. So we'll see whether that's the case. You will see also that it is a top-ranked university. It is famous for world-class research, for designing comprehensive programs, data-driven programs as well, and initiatives. And this is perfectly fitting the course as well. So, you know, you need to live by what you preach as well, right? So this is what you see here at Cambridge Judge Business School. So very quickly, I will give you a bit of an overview about why are we here, and then I let David and Eris to explain you a little bit about what the key takeaways are in the curriculum. That's really the main part of the program today. Of course, you have heard a lot about AI in the last year or two, but the AI has existed since the 50s, right? Since the Dartmouth conference. So we will cover the traditional AI in this program, or we will cover the generative AI as well. And Eris and David will explain it, how we will do it at this in a moment. You'll see here that many businesses are thinking about using AI one way or another. So this is the key thing to remember. We're talking about a business perspective, how to use AI to achieve business objectives, how to use AI to achieve your strategic objectives, right? So you will see soon enough who we think this is the best audience when it comes to learners, but we don't think that you will need to become a coder, that you will need to spend a lot of time on GitHub, but it's more that you get the vocabulary, that you can work with data scientists, whether they report to you or you work with them, or your other fellow business leaders are running those organizations. So you can get the best out of it. You can get some tangible business benefits. That's really the point. The AI is here to help you. It's a means to an end rather than a toy. But that being said, it's very hands-on program, so I'm sure it will be a lot of fun as well to do. Now, how will that look like from day-to-day perspective? This will be 8 weeks. It's purely online. We think that it takes you 4 to 6 hours per week. And the main thing is, and if you haven't taken some of these courses before, it's a mix of what some people call asynchronous and live learning. So asynchronous means the lectures are recorded. So we'll see Eris and David in recorded lectures. So you can watch them whenever it suits you. We will release the content on a weekly basis. So everybody's kind of moving at the same pace. But you can watch it before work or during lunch break or after work or over the weekend, whichever way you like. But there will be live sessions with faculty as well. But these are not lectures because we think that you are senior executives who are busy. So no one expects you to be available necessarily for a lecture on Thursday, 2 p.m. or something like this. We will tell you the schedule well in advance, but all the sessions will be recorded as well. So in case you miss it, these sessions are optional. They are highly recommended, but they're optional. We don't take attendance. We can ask David and Eris whether they are in the habit of cold calling, like in a business school, but I think probably not. So nothing to worry about there. It's meant to be a group discussion as a reflection on what you have seen in the videos. At the same time, you will have learning facilitators. You will have live discussions with them as well, and they can help you processing the content. And also there will be program support that will help you with any administrative issues if you have any and things like this. And one last thing is, it sounds like a cliche, but the more you put in, the more you get out of it. That's why we encourage the group discussions. There is a group discussion forum on our course website. And because you will see that your classmates will be very experienced leaders, it's a good idea to contribute and to show examples of what you have heard about in the videos and how you dealt with this at work. So you can learn from one another. And of course, there will be some assignments. But again, we are past that stage when we compete on grades, right? So what we want to see is that you put some effort so that Cambridge is also proud to be associated with you and you put some work into this. But we are not going to talk about grades and who did 10% better or worse. It's more about reinforcing the learning, and that's all. So key takeaways. Let's hear from David and Eris some of the thoughts about what you can learn when you take this program.
Hey, thanks, Tudor. So yeah, just to reiterate the point, our focus here is how you can use all these tools, including, of course, AI, to make better decisions. And that's why we spend our first session discussing what's your decision-making process, how you can improve it, how do you focus on the things that matter, rather than just doing the analysis for the sake of the analysis. And then that's following up about understanding how do you measure if something works or not. And we talk about designing, for example, an experiment and following a rigorous process to understand what drives performance in your company.
Yeah, and experimentation is so important even in this generative AI world, right? So no one can tell you what to use the AI for. You have to try things out yourself. So it's a cultural way of looking at doing business as well. One of the other outcomes is to do with using machine learning. So there's the stuff that the AI that came before ChatGPT and the AI that came after. So the AI that came before was machine learning. So taking lots of data and predicting stuff as accurately as possible. And of course, if you can predict what's the demand going to be for your product, then that allows you to buy the right amount of goods for your warehouse so that they're not sitting around for a long time, for example, right? Or if you can use weather data or other kinds of data to make predictions, then that has real business implications.
And
Brilliant.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry if you heard about, that correlation is not causation. And that's why we explicitly have a session on why is causality important in some cases and not in others, and how you can use, let's say, tools like ChatGPT to actually do some kind of the analysis that would have been quite challenging to do it without coding a few years ago. So we'll talk about these methods and we can show you, how it's done. And some of you, the more adventurous one, you can also try to do it with or without coding if you prefer.
And then that, of course, leads into, all right, we're using generative AI, but what is it? In my experience, pretty much everyone's tried at least ChatGPT or other large language model, but they don't know how it works. Now, I don't mean in terms of the code or in terms of the mathematics, but just intuitively, it's very useful to know what is this algorithm that I'm working with, because some people have got into trouble and some organizations have got into trouble when they've deployed generative AI and it hasn't worked in the way that they've expected. So, there was a lawyer that used ChatGPT to write a legal case, and ChatGPT just made up the references, and the lawyer and his company got into trouble for that. So we cover the intuition to help you to know how it works and what makes a good use case for this in an organization. And then that helps you to think about how it might not work. Which also leads into our next bullet point around the legal and ethical concepts that apply to organizations' use of data and AI. So of course, legally, you've got things like GDPR. It's an acronym that we hear a lot about, but what actually is it involved and what does it mean for businesses and for individuals? What are some of the rights under GDPR? Now, some of which seem to conflict with machine learning, for example. So the right to explainability, and a customer should be able to get an explanation of what you're doing with their data. How does that work, given that you've got machine learning, which is famously often a black box? We also cover the ethical side. So one of the live webinars, for example, that I do is about my experience creating an algorithm that could make predictions about people's personalities. And this algorithm was misused by a company called Cambridge Analytica that worked on behalf of Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential campaign. People were very unhappy about that. So I bring this into my teaching, and I get people to debate and discuss uses of this algorithm and what makes something ethical or not ethical in practice. So this isn't, the philosophy of ethics so much. It's the practical side. You're business executives, you're putting things into practice. You're in control and you're responsible as well. What are the things to think about when you're using some of these amazing technologies?
All right, well, great stuff. Well, we already start receiving some great questions, so might as well try to answer some of them. And then, of course, you will see during the presentation more detail on this. And I think the number one fundamental question is, there's so many AI courses nowadays online. How is this different from any other? I won't pick a name, why is it different? Why does it stand out?
So I must admit, having looked at other AI courses that are around, one of the things that frustrates me is that they do mix up machine learning and generative AI. Because often these courses were created before the generative AI era, and then they sort of update them a bit with some new material, and it all kind of gets mixed up. And you see it so often in business. People talk about, well, we need to use AI, and then someone says, well, what is AI? And no one really knows. So we explicitly split up machine learning and as I said, the stuff that was absolutely cutting edge before ChatGPT came out in 2022, and talk about how that's still relevant and it's still powerful and it can be used for different things. And then what came after with generative AI, which is a qualitatively different type of AI. It's not the kind of the logical AI that we were used to before. It's unreliable and it's more intuitive than it is logical. So really splitting that up allows an understanding of the two, and what are the use cases for machine learning and what are the use cases for generative AI.
Yeah, but also it's a very practical focus that we have, both from our real world experiences, both from David's and myself, rather than a technical or theoretical discussion about some of those tools. And that's why we will also have people from the industry who will be joining the course and as guest speakers.
All right, brilliant. So you hopefully have heard that David and Aris are saying that this course was designed with generative AI in mind, right? It's not just a paint job over the traditional AI, but obviously we start with enterprise, we start with traditional AI as well, which some people might find boring, but that's really how it all started, right? And then, of course, it's all practical. It's meant to be hands-on, and you need to go through many cases which are from the business environment rather than from technical environment, or technical perspective. So we'll see that in a second. Who is this program for? Maybe you can, David and Aris, also spend a few moments on who do you think this is the best audience for, or best audience for this program?
I mean, you can see some of those on the screen. What Aris and I have in mind with our teaching is, we are not teaching data scientists. So, this isn't a data science course. This is for business executives. Albeit, in my experience, so many data projects fail, and AI projects are going to be the same. And the reason is because you've got data people who don't know anything about business. So they create amazing algorithms, but solve the wrong problems. And then you've got business people who don't know anything about data and AI and what can it do for me. So then, organizations invest a lot of money in having data scientists and doing data projects, but they don't really take advantage of that investment opportunity because the business people don't know, what can AI do for me? So what we're trying to do in this program is to build the bridge between the two. And I think that's the most valuable people in business right now. Those who know about business problems, but know also the intuition of what can data do, so that they can bring the two together. And as you said earlier, Rudy, I mean, this is for you know, what we have in mind is people working with data analysts or data scientists, or maybe they're doing some of that themselves, and they want a sort of a primer to get started on this. Certainly, it doesn't assume any kind of previous experience in AI or machine learning. So we've got, you know, people who know about marketing or operations or finance or whatever in mind, not so much data scientists.
All right, so that's already an answer to Omiro's question as well. He was asking how easy it would be to follow AI course without any real prior experience in the subject. So as David, you just said, there are no prerequisites for this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying, you know, I'm not a computer scientist. I'm interested in organizational behavior as my area. So, you know, what do employees do? What do teams do? What do consumers do? So in my work and my research and my teaching, it's about kind of borrowing the expertise from computer science and then applying it to the areas that I'm interested in terms of behavior. You know, that's how I structure my teaching around this. It's about, okay, let's borrow these tools from computer scientists that are very powerful, but you know, the emphasis on how can we apply them to our business problems, and that's something that normally resonates with the groups that I teach.
Great stuff, perfect. Once again, I already talked a little bit about how your day-to-day experience will look like. So the thing is, you will have live sessions, you will have lectures which are pre-recorded. We combine the two things. I said that you should also ideally contribute to discussions. We don't force you, but it's great learning experience. There will be some assignments which contribute, or the points would contribute to the requirement to get the digital certificate that I will show you at the end. How will that look like? But more importantly than anything else, you will have case studies, which David and Eris will talk about in a moment as well, that you can work on. We can also think about, okay, can people cooperate on this as a group? Typically, the assignments are individual, but of course, you can work with your peers as well offline as you wish, but the assignments are typically individual. So once again, this is all meant to be structured so we get on the same page each and every week, but there is flexibility built in here so that you can deal with any business surprises or family surprises at your end as well. All right, so Eris, maybe if you could talk a little bit more about your background, that would be great.
So, so my background is in computer science, but over the years I encountered exactly the challenge that David was talking about, that you really need to make the transition to the business side and talk to that language, and that is not as straightforward as some people think, and that's, you know, part of why within this as a course is very valuable to bring those sides together. But probably what I try to understand with my research and teaching is how to translate some of the strategic objectives that companies have. For example, you know, companies might say we're going to develop those breakthrough products, or we might aim to enter this new market. To how do you actually translate those to projects, whether it's data science projects or whether they are investments, and how do you assess what will be a good or a bad investment in a technology, in an infrastructure, and so on. And then how, once you have those projects, how do you measure using data? So there's many levels, and I'm trying to understand how do we make the communication across those levels more efficient and more productive for the business.
And yes, so I mean, I've mentioned a little bit about my background. So I'm a computational social scientist. So the social scientist bit means I'm interested in people, behavior, why do people do what they do? But the way that I examine it is by using methods from computer science. I basically came to the view that behavior is so complex, and you know, if you've managed a team, then it's very likely you'll have said, well, you know, the hardest issues are not so much the technical ones, it's the people issues, right? It's the, you know, all the little nuances of behavior are very difficult. So I came to the view that if you really want to understand behavior, you need a lot of data. So that's my way of kind of looking at the world. I'm interested in why do people do what they do, you know, and that might be why do they click on adverts, or it might be, you know, what's happening within the team. But I do that through a lens of data. So trying to turn it into personality scores, for example, or using large data sets of behavior, such as from social media. And just say, there was one of the questions, are these the lecturers or another set of lectures? I promise this is no fake, this is Aris and I's course. And we're delighted to be here to talk about it.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about program curriculum. I know that you developed some of these modules, and Iris the other one. So let's give people a little bit of a flavor of what's behind those headlines.
Yeah, so we said the premise of the course is that, you know, you can use data and tools to make better decisions. So first of all, we kick off by defining what is a good decision, what is a good decision-making process, how do you frame the different business decisions, what are common biases, barriers that you need to overcome, and how actually data can help you, or actually sometimes can hinder if you are, for example, using the wrong data, and you might be ticking off the statistical significant box, but with the wrong data, how you can fall into those traps.
The next module, getting creative with big data. So I intentionally put getting creative in the module title because people often think of data, okay, it's about the stats, it's about, you know, logic, it's very mathematical. But for me, especially in a business context, it's about being creative. It's going, okay, here's an opportunity to use data in a new way in order to get some value from that. And especially with big data, it might not be kind of perfect. It might be a signal that's correlated with something that you're interested in. It might have challenges and limitations. But if you're creative enough and you see it in the right way, then there might be value there.
Great. And once you have lots of creative ideas, you can start testing them and say which ones are actually going to be working, which ones might be more relevant for my customers, which one deliver. So the next, so module 3 is about designing those experiments. And we do talk about some of the statistics here, but the point always when we teach this kind of courses is that don't worry so much about the statistical tick box. That's the easy stuff. It's about thinking what is that you're trying to measure. So we put a lot of emphasis, and actually one of the assignments that, you know, Rudolf mentioned earlier is like, how would you design an experiment for your company? And one of the highlights for this type of course is that we get to learn what, you know, how you think about the challenge that you face as executives. And we've seen some really great ideas. Even, for example, how do you design an experiment to test if my boss is more likely to respond to email type A versus email type B? And some of the participants have seen great improvement. So from this kind of stuff that it's not a typical statistics textbook material.
Then we've got a module on machine learning. Again, you know, this is not a maths module, but we talk about the intuition of different algorithms. And we go as far as neural networks. So, I mean, this is cutting edge when it comes to machine learning. You know, because when you've got a lot of data, then you've got, you know, the option to power these kinds of algorithms. So we do a little like simulation game with neural networks, so you can build your own and have a play and see what happens. Also talk about their trade-offs. So I mean, one of the things that I'm surprised more people don't think about is why are these algorithms black boxes? Like, how can it be that we've got an algorithm that makes predictions and we built it, but somehow we don't understand what we built? Surely that sort of doesn't make sense. So by understanding the intuition, you can start to see, okay, all right, I give you all of the maths that makes this prediction, but we still can't understand it. So that's these kinds of trade-offs. So you've got the advanced algorithms, they make great predictions, but might be completely unexplainable. And on the other hand, you've got more transparent algorithms who has worse prediction power normally, but you can get much better explanations. And then coming back to the business side, it's up to you as a business leader to think about what kind of explanation do I need for my particular use case? Who are my stakeholders? Are we talking about customers? Are we talking about my senior executives? Are we talking about a regulator? And those different groups need different types of explanation. And that helps you to guide what machine learning algorithm to use. So it's not, should I use machine learning or not? It's more, all right, my data scientists have got a whole suite of machine learning tools and capabilities. And how can I guide them to make sure that they give me what I need from a business perspective?
And once you have some great predictions from your machine learning model, often the next question you want to ask is, so should I take a specific course of action? How confident do I feel, for example, that my analysis has uncovered the true cause for the business improvement? For example, do I spend more money on marketing, or did I pick up some kind of a pattern that wouldn't necessarily happen in the future? So that's some of the topics we discuss in Module 5 in causal analytics, understanding the true cause-effect relationship. And I see some questions in the chat about what kind of Gen AI we're going to be using, or what's going to be the role. And for example, in this module, we're going to be using, it doesn't really matter which ones you use now, models, but let's say in 2 years ago, if someone wanted to do some of those methods, it would require an understanding of programming, whether it's Python or R or Stat or some kind of language. Now, we can show you, very efficiently how one could run some of those causal models using Gen AI, and again, irrespective of the platform, your preferred platform. But our main focus on that module would be on giving you the confidence that a particular course of action or decision is going to lead to some desired business outcome, if you have, of course, the appropriate data for that.
And then we talk about generative AI. So, starting by, okay, what is the difference between machine learning and generative AI? Because generative AI is built on machine learning, but somehow when you put it together and produce this intelligent algorithm, it doesn't act in the way that machine learning algorithms act. I already mentioned they're unreliable, they hallucinate. The other fascinating thing about generative AI is it wasn't built for any particular purpose. So all the machine learning before that, so Google's AlphaGo algorithm, right? It beat the best Go player in the world at Go, but that's all it does, right? That's what it's trained to do. You can go to Google and say, I've got a problem, and for some reason I need a Go algorithm to solve it, and Google could say, oh, AlphaGo will be perfect, right? Or you can go to Google and say, I've got a chess problem, can AlphaGo solve it? And Google will say, no, it can't, it only plays Go. But generative AI, if you go to OpenAI or any of the other large language model companies and say, I've got this problem, can Gen AI solve it? They can't really answer you. The only thing you can do, because the generative AI wasn't built to solve a particular problem, it was just kind of built to be intelligent. And so therefore, you have to try this out and you have to see, does it solve my particular problem? You have to be experimental and play with this stuff. So yes, it doesn't work in the way, qualitatively different to the machine learning that we're used to. And as I said, we'll talk a bit about how it works, and that helps us to realize why it's like that, why it fails. Aris mentioned, it doesn't really matter which one you use. And that's one of the other things that we mentioned. These things are becoming increasingly commoditized, and there's lots and lots of options. You got DeepSeek from China and various ones from the US. So there's lots of options, and increasingly there's very little difference between them. So what also does that mean for you building on top of it? It means it's even more important to come up with a good use case that generates value. And that's where the opportunity is, I would say, to turn AI into business value. Then our next module is on the legal and ethical use of data and AI. So as I mentioned before, we'll talk about things like GDPR. So what are the legal requirements around use of very personal sensitive data? Just what is personal data, for example? GDPR is very clear on that. And also, I mentioned some of the ethical issues when it comes to things like machine learning. Also, the ethical issues when it comes to generative AI. So in machine learning, you've got issues like bias and things like that. Some of them also apply to generative AI. But generative AI also brings its own unique ethical issues. For example, what does it mean if an organization creates a therapist AI? Is that ethically a good thing or not? What if it makes an AI that becomes friends with people's children as a way to educate them? Is that ethically good or not? So it's got its own interesting ethical issues.
And lastly, once we cover all this, the broad range of topics, we want to ask the question, like, how do you actually use these tools to have a real impact in your company? And what do you anticipate as sort of getting on the way between, the knowledge that you have now and driving a more data-driven culture to your company or institution? So in the last module, we talk about what often people face, as David was saying earlier. Sometimes you have great tools, but you're working on the wrong problem. And we discuss in-depth case studies of companies that had the same issues, but they managed to overcome those. And again, in the live webinar, we ask you to give us as much detail as you want about either your company or your previous experience, including, the expertise that you bring as senior executives on how you manage some of the change management issues in your experience. But that's the session that basically everything comes together in driving impact.
And that culture is so key. A lot of, generative AI has taken longer to have business impact than people expected. And it's largely down to the culture of the organizations. And, are they experimental? Are they risk-taking? Are they trying new things? Are they moving fast? And, Aris and I are talking to lots of businesses now and teaching lots of businesses where they say things like, we missed the mobile revolution, and we don't want to miss that AI revolution. So, if you can sort of look back and see, my organization missed this big thing in the past, and we don't want to miss the next one, then this kind of module and session is key for that.
Wonderful. So thanks so much. Many of the things that are questions in the chat you touched upon, but maybe let's be clear and go through them as well. So for instance, Adi Aman's asking if we have standard set of Gen AI models that can be leveraged to implement it practically in the course.
So as I say, so we talk about various models, but as I say, increasingly they're becoming more and more similar in their capabilities. So of course, these things will change over time in the future as well. So we're not pushing a particular company's stuff. We're more kind of fundamentally saying, okay, if you're using generative AI, whoever's model it is, then this is the opportunity. This is what you can do.
All right, and yeah, sorry, Iris, go for it.
I can see a question about whether we cover Python, R, Tableau, Power BI. We don't get into programming aspects, so it's not that we're gonna open an R studio and run code. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, but we can show some of those methods, but yeah, you're certainly not expected to have coding or use R in this course.
All right, so it's not a technical course, right? As we said before, this is for managers to be able to talk to data scientists and vice versa, data scientists to appreciate the business perspective, build the bridge, as David called it earlier in the session. There's one other follow-up on this from Adi Amans asking whether he will be in a position to use the right AI or generative AI models with the help of IT and business, which I'm working on, to apply these models to make some decisions with the trillions of data that I already have access to, irrespective of an industry. So will I be in a position to use or choose the right models?
Yes, so there's a whole bunch of our modules which would apply to this quite complex question, right? So I mean, the first thing is saying, okay, if we've got trillions of data points, how can you use them? That's around thinking about, well, how good is this data? How might it be relevant to the business problems? How can I get creative with it, with new kinds of data, right? So if it's pictures of things, then what can we extract from that? How can AI help us with that? All the way through to, okay, should I apply machine learning? Is this a machine learning problem? And if so, what algorithms? Or is this a generative AI problem? And therefore, what might the challenges be if I put generative AI into practice? Do I need to tell people I'm using generative AI? Do I need to have a human in the loop? All these kinds of things. And then the legal and ethical things, and the session about, or the module about, how do I overcome these challenges to put it into practice, starts becoming relevant at the end.
There's
Brilliant. Yeah, go for it.
I can see about data governance and strategy. And yes, those are covered towards the end of the course, both of those.
Okay, brilliant. And Darius is asking if you can evaluate the course program. How much is it about data analytics versus AI? 70-30, 50-50, or 20-80? So data and analytics versus AI. Or can you split it, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first question is, how are you defining AI? So are you including machine learning in that, or are you only saying generative AI? I probably shouldn't answer, but I'll answer, and then best and then Aris can tell me that I'm wrong. So maybe it's sort of 50% data, I would say, 20% machine learning, and 30% generative AI. Maybe that's how I'd put it. What would you say, Aris?
Yep, that sounds about right to me. But let's say, for example, in module 3, there's nothing about AI, but you can use AI, Gen AI specifically here, to test if you have statistical significance. Would you include it as a Gen AI session? Probably not, because you are doing it in a very specific way. Is it important for your experiment? Yes, it is. So it's hard to define exactly. Like, it can be a small percentage, but it can be very impactful in the individual session. I would say it's quite throughout pretty much the course. There are, the AI discussion will come up one way or another.
All right. Well, Darius says, I see machine learning separate from generative AI. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
As I said, these things are fundamentally different, and it has business implications as to which one should you deploy and how.
Even though I'm assuming that's what he meant, because people also said sometimes the GAI is general intelligence, right? So it's, again, a different beast.
So that's something that I would cover in one of the live webinars. So one of the live webinars I do is around what is the latest in AI and data, and then I share some things from the news that have happened in the last few months. And this is one way that we keep the course, bang up to date. It's also an opportunity. I mean, recently I've when I've talked about the last few months, I've been having discussions and getting people to debate, are we going to get general intelligence? Are we going to get artificial super intelligence? And what's happened in the last few months that might tell us which path we're going on? And I mean, it's fascinating where it might go.
Yeah, and maybe at that time you invite your avatar to be a guest speaker as well, right?
Exactly. There is an avatar of me.
So there you go. So we talked about case studies already. Maybe a little bit of a flavor from David and from Aris. What are these case studies about, right? You see, first of all, different industries. That's what I would say. But anything else you want to add as a key point or key takeaway from this slide?
For example, just very quickly, the case study about Roche Pharmaceuticals is about, this how extremely, intelligence, data science teams that handle trillions of data points, as we were saying earlier, how do they demonstrate their impact to the senior leadership of the company? With how do they speak the language that they speak in terms of the revenues, the cost, and other metrics that they're very different from the metrics that a machine learning model would develop, for example, at least in this case. And we discussed how they made sort of the bridge. There were multiple bridges from the very technical, extremely scientific teams to the most senior leaderships at the board of the company. And yes, all the cases, by the way, I saw a question, are the cases real? Yes, they're all real cases. They're not, deep fakes or something like
that. Just pick up a couple very briefly. So in the Netflix case, this is Netflix set up a competition and said, if you can improve our algorithm by 10%, we'll give you $1 million. And it took about 3 years, but it was actually a sort of a fascinating race. So it took 3 years, but one of the teams got their $1 million. So we talk about why did they do that? And what does this mean for machine learning, right? Why has it taken off so much? It's because of competitions like this. Or the Air Canada case, this is about Air Canada. They put a chatbot on their website to answer customer queries. And someone asked for their policy, and the chatbot gave them an answer. So they followed the policy. They went back to Air Canada and said, I followed your policy. Can I get a refund? And Air Canada said no. And they said, why not? And Air Canada said, you haven't followed our policy. And they said, well, I have followed their policy because I did what the chatbot said. And Air Canada said, yeah, but that's not our policy. So they had to sue Air Canada. And Air Canada tried to argue in court, essentially, that the chatbot made a mistake, not us. So you should sue the chatbot. This was not effective. The court did not agree. Air Canada were held responsible. So this is an example of deploying Gen AI, but not entirely understanding how it works. And therefore, it's done something that they didn't expect, and they are now held responsible.
Yeah, and finally, the deep sea AI case is about an AI maritime company that developed a very successful product, but nonetheless, they had a hard time selling it to other businesses, basically, the tanker oil owners and so on. So it's how do you demonstrate something technically works brilliantly, but then how do you make sure it's adopted by corporations who are maybe reluctant for a number of reasons in a very traditional industries, and how do you redesign the whole proof of concept process to speed up the adoption of an AI tool, which works, again, brilliantly, but the customers have to buy it to show the impact.
Great stuff. So hopefully you got a bit of a flavor of what we were talking about when we talked about hands-on, we talked about business-oriented, tangible business outcomes, and it's industry agnostic, right? We talk about airlines, we talk about transport, pharma, we talk about streaming, all kinds of things. So we can also talk about other industries in the live sessions as much as possible. So at the end of the day, some people don't want to get the certificate, fine, but most people do. And I would encourage you to put when you put so much time and effort into this, then you complete also the required assignments and you get the certificate that looks kind of like this. It's a verified digital certificate, so it's not just a PDF form. It is expected that people would like to do a background check on you. So this is all embedded in this. And then people who finish the program, they very proudly share this on LinkedIn or on their CV, and hopefully you will do the same. So recap, what you will get is an 8-week program. It's in-depth program which talks about business data or data analytics and AI with appreciation for both machine learning and generative AI. It's about people-centric solutions, and it's about the impacts on the organization. It's about analytical tools, of course, but it's more about getting you to the level of let's say, being technologically savvy to be able to talk to data scientists rather than to become one, and vice versa. If you're a data scientist or you have that background, talk to the commercial management as well. There will be live sessions, just as like there will be pre-recorded lectures as well. And all of those core concepts will be kind of drilled into you in a way through application, not memorization, right? So what are the next steps? If you are clear on whether this is the right program for you, you can see here the QR code on my left, which says apply online. So if you have a phone, you can just scan the QR code. It will lead you to the right place. You can register there and move on from there, or you can go through LinkedIn, the same thing on the left side. I also see a question from Adiyaman, whether this is the right course for you. If we haven't answered your questions 100%, you can also use the QR code on your right. And you can schedule a follow-up call, 101, and you can have a discussion with a learning advisor, and there you can figure out whether this is the right program for you. You will see also the links in the chat if you are here with us live. But again, if you are watching this from a recording, then it's still valid. You can just pull up your phone and scan the QR code. That's the easiest way to do it. Once again, you can register on my left side, or you can schedule a follow-up call on my right side. So pause here for a few seconds. Any other final questions, please put them in the Q&A if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I hope that we answered most of your questions. And if not, you are intrigued enough to have a follow-up discussion with one of our learning advisors. You can click on the link, and I think it will lead you to Calendly. You can book it easily and have a chat. And then you can, of course, apply online as well if you are clear. So once again, it's 8 weeks. It's business-oriented. It's for senior management. It's cognizant of both traditional and generative AI. It doesn't need any prerequisites when it comes to technical knowledge, but of course, it will give you enough vocabulary so that you can manage effectively the data scientists, or maybe you can challenge them. You can guide them to the solving the right problems, as David said. It's about solving the right problems with the right tools so that we have something tangible to show for it, right? Rather than we want to play with another toy, right? This is all designed with business objectives and strategy in mind.
Just one of the questions I saw really earlier was someone said, are AI agents something that we cover? So these kinds of cutting edge things happening in generative AI, that's the kind of thing that I cover in the live webinar about what's happened in literally the last 3 months. I also make content from my previous live webinars, so you can see 3 months ago what had just happened. So that's how we keep it bang up to date with what's happening.
Perfect, great point. So the live sessions are designed for two reasons. So they are interactive, so you have an opportunity to talk to David and Aries and to kind of guide them where you want to focus. But also, even though the videos are as fresh as they can possibly be, the things are moving so fast that that's why we need live sessions as well to catch up with whatever happened last week. So live sessions are, of course, updated just before the session. And we can focus on zoom in on what you are interested in most and also bridge the, let's say, evergreen content with whatever's latest happening in the marketplace. So Madhuri, yes, if you want to reach out to learning advisors, please go ahead and do so. Or otherwise, if it's clear for you that this is the right thing to do, then please look at on the left side and scan the QR code there, register. The idea here is that this should help you with your career advancement, potentially with your career changes. We, of course, cannot guarantee you a new job or a new role, but we believe that equipping you with these sort of skills and this knowledge should be very, very beneficial these days. So once again, you have the links in the chat as well. So, and also you had a question whether you will get the slides. Yes, once again, you will get the slides if you registered. In case you couldn't make it today, in any case, you will get the slides by email, and then they will be also posted on YouTube. Andre, thank you. All right, so it looks like everything is clear. So perfect, great job, David and Eris. Everything is clear. Lots of students to talk to soon enough. So thank you so much for your time. Great insights, great questions, and hope to see you soon.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks for joining and look forward to speaking to you in the live webinars.